Hello, thank you for joining me. I swear every time I'm listening to that intro video, I start like dancing before the camera comes on.
It's a catchy little tune.
I love it.
It
So,
is
my
cute.
name is Princella Stringer, and if you haven't been on this channel before, I create videos that hopefully will inspire women to live their limitless potential. And it's a transition I think that many women are going through on a continual basis. And to kind of help support you in that journey and even encourage myself in this journey, I invite women to come on and talk about what they think about limitlessness and what it means to be a limitless woman. And I'm so excited to have who I have on today, which is my dear friend from back in the day. Right, Leida?
Oh yeah, we go way back.
We go way back. And it's so fun to have you on to talk about what you're doing today. But before we go there, I just want to remind people real quick, if you're watching this video and you have not liked this page, do me a favor and click like, go to YouTube, click subscribe, and you can watch this video and the other videos in this video series and what women are saying about living limitlessly. And I hope these inspire you, and if they do, leave a comment and let us know. So, Leida, do you want to share a little bit about what you do today and a little bit about your background and what led you to do what you do today?
Yeah, absolutely. Today I am a sales manager for a pretty large company. I've been in sales my whole life. Literally, I would say since I was 15 years old. My family
Yeah.
started in sales. They had their own business. I actually opened my own business when I was about 19, and I ran that for about 10 years. You probably remember my dance studio that I had,
Oh, yeah.
and and
Yeah.
that
And
was great. It gave me
no, I just wanted
it,
to
it gave
say
me
it
experience
was,
hands-on.
I'm sorry, Leida, I keep talking over you, but I just want to say it was so inspiring to me to see you as a young woman my age starting a business. I thought it was younger than
Yeah.
19. I was almost going to introduce you as a 16-year-old starter entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, I had the idea because obviously I was a dancer. When I realized I wasn't going to be a dancer, I wanted to contribute some way in the dance world. And I had gone to school. At that point, I was in college, and literally, I was in my dorm, and I was 18. I said, I'm gonna go open my business, and I came back and I looked for a little spot in my hometown where I knew people. I remember going to the Chamber of Commerce when I was 19, and they would not give me a business license because I was 19. And I was like, and they said that, that was like, I said, I couldn't believe it, and I had known a few people in the community. My parents had a business in town, so I had to use some pull. But think about today, if you see any like YouTubers at 15 who are, I mean, all I wanted was a business license to go and open it, and they felt that through the Chamber of Commerce in this town that I probably was not prepared, possibly, and I can imagine, some of their thoughts on that. But I went ahead and opened it with the Chamber of Commerce's approval. Of course, I was able to get a business license with a co-signer. And then when I went back 2 years, when I had grown my business from 30 students to 300 students in 2 years, they, of course, let me be in the Chamber of Commerce.
Oh my word. I didn't know that part of your story. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah. I did everything to try to show that I was serious. I was doing parades and the Chamber of Commerce fairs. Because, I mean, to be serious, you had to be part of the chamber. That's how it was back in the early 90s. There wasn't the technology piece of it. There was no, internet was just coming out, and every form of
Yeah.
advertising. I remember I was doing the yellow pages. I was doing flyers. And then I found out one day the best form of advertising for my business. I had a storefront in a strip mall facing a major road, and this kid came by and he's like, it was fun, signage and bright colors. And I'm like, okay, sure, sure. That signage and that, attention to the streets and to the road brought more people in then the yellow pages. Then, I mean, I was tried everything. I was very creative, and that was actually really, you know, I like what I do. I love teaching, but then I found out that I had to really hire great teachers and run the business, because at that point I was trying to do everything. And that was one of my first lessons, where you have to know how to delegate, you have to know how to hire good people and run your business. And luckily I was able to grow my business, that I moved to a larger location up here,
I remember
from
that.
a, yeah, I was actually, it's funny because I was in one area where there was a little bar next to me, which was kind of funny because people would be like, "Oh, you have a dance studio next to a bar." But I was trying to find, the cheapest rent to have a little one studio, one studio, one chain, and it was, yeah, you probably remember that location.
I
And
do.
then
Yeah.
from there, on the other side of me, opened up a cigarette shop. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I had a bar on one side, a cigarette shop on the other, with the humidor and everything. And luckily I had such a loyal following that people stayed with me. And so at that point I said, I have to move, I have to grow. And I remember that was a big leap of faith, because I went from a maybe to almost 5 feet building. So from there my story grew, and having to keep up with it. So, but I was actually still going to college. So I was going to school. I had transferred. I had went out of state. I came back in town, and one day I was there, and we had opened inside my second studio a little shop, and we sold dance shoes and tutus, and I'll never. This was when I decided I wanted to go into sales. A lady came in, and she called dance shoes. So I went to the back of my studio. I'm like, I don't want this girl not to have dance shoes. And I ran to the back. I grabbed a basket of people's shoes that they left in the lost and found. And I
Yeah.
said, they've been sitting there for months. They're not going to come probably get their stuff. I went back to the front. I said, listen, I go, these are shoes. They're in good shape. I sold her to sales because you just sold me a used pair of shoes. And I'm like, you know what? I come from a family of salespeople, and I said, maybe I should. So I pretty much, and what changed was industry at the time, because I lived in Italy when I was younger. I wanted to be like, an art historian, and I said, change the major, change it. And I went back to school, and I ran my school part-time, and then I went and I did international business with a marketing and finance degree. And that's what I ended up finishing my degree in. But it was like those little lessons of the lady telling me that, I'm going to spend $40 on a used pair of colors. And I just felt that, I love the I don't know, the idea of, seeing somebody, finding what they're looking for, and then you being part of it. And obviously sales has many levels. So I went into that, and I continued running my school, finished, goodness, that was 90. I sold it 10 years later. And I'm trying to think, and then I basically stayed then I went into the corporate world. So I kind of went the total, usually people go into
Yes.
corporate. My story is
Yes.
different. It was like I did that for 10 years. I had a young son, and I just said, I'm glad I did it. It was a passion of mine. I have no regrets. I learned my best sales skills by doing it myself. But, I wanted to myself, America had out for it. So when I sold it and I went back into corporate, sales, and that's what I've been doing since then. So.
Right. Yeah. I remember in our youth that you always had this air of confidence about you. And so I'm sure it had a lot to do with your upbringing. Your mother is a wonderful woman and very influential in my life as a teen. But you always carried yourself that way. And then those life skills and connecting the dots with what you do today, which is very successful corporate sales, right? In the hotel
Right.
industry.
Yeah. So I moved around a little bit, and I realized that I wanted to. International. My family comes from a background where they had a travel agency, if you remember. So I had a lot of opportunities to travel, and I always wanted to do that And in the world today, the word dollar, obviously. I picked that, and so I always found companies to work for that were looking to grow their international divisions. So I'm kind of in a smaller niche, of business, but it's very rewarding because you find opportunities that my language skills can help in, or a lot of my global experience in finance has helped quite a bit. So I've been really fortunate. The company I work for now, they're the largest in the world. Actually, we do everything from selling, the supplies to hotel management. We have offices literally, and so I started there because I wanted to be in a company where I knew I could grow. I had traveled pretty much the world with my other companies, and then I had another child, and the work-life balance is very important to me. And I had to find a company where I knew I can grow with, but would still respect my time and the flexibility of working from home. The telecommuting is great, but yet they value. It's something that it's hard to find nowadays. But I always tell women, if you're looking for something, don't settle because there's something out there. Work around, find. Really hone your skills while you're moving around, which is what I did. Every job I had, I found a lot from for this position that I wanted to get to eventually, and that's where I am now. I pretty much manage a team of about 18 people from large chain hotels and the international division. So Caribbean, South America, and Canada. So and that's the team that I manage today. And I've been with the company for
several years. I know you've been with
13 years. I went back there starting, as a sales rep. I knew that I was gonna, because I had been a manager before, but I had to sacrifice. I wanted to see my younger son more than I had seen my older son because I had traveled a lot. So I had to make that choice. But fortunately for me, so and I always millennial generation hire a lot of them. And I say it's not, it takes time. I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes it's a sense of they want to see results quickly. I go, that's not how the world works. Not for most people, let's say,
What? It doesn't work that way? I still believe it works that way.
I know. No, they come in, they don't get the office window, and I don't get a 2-hour lunch.
Yeah. Let me ask you
So,
something because although we knew each other, well, it was like middle school or was it early high school that we met? Middle school, wasn't it?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, middle school. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because, as I said earlier, you always had this air of confidence about you. And I don't remember what it was that connected us together, but we walked very different paths. I eventually became a young mom and a single mom later, and that led to a lot of, confidence issues. And it wasn't until I matured and became older where I started pouring into myself, building my self-confidence and my self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I know my journey and my perspective of you is always having this really confidence air about yourself. And so how do you think that mindset impacted you and what you're doing today? And did you yourself actually struggle with some of those things that I just mentioned that I struggled with as a teen? Or were you able to maintain this level of confidence?
I think every young teen definitely goes through that. I would say it's important to have a mentor. If it's not your own parents, mother, father, or and in my case, it was my mother. She was a very strong, up to the say, very strong-willed woman. Um, and so I had a lot of support from her, and she was very much a role model to me in that way because I saw her coming here as an immigrant with pretty much nothing, and she built her business up, and very and with very little education. So sometimes you feel like you have to have that double master's degree, to get to where you
Yeah.
need to be, and that was not her case. And so I remember even in high school, one example is she put me in a class of And I said, what next class? I'm the only girl in this class. She goes, because you're going to learn how to change a tire and change a car oil. And I'm like, why would I need to do that? And nowadays, when this happens to me, I know how to change a tire. I know how to, and my friends are like,
Right.
how do you know how to change a tire? So I think she taught me a lot of independence, and I'm a youth leader right now of a group of girls in my church. And that's the main thing I teach. Like, 16, 17, and you're feeling low self-esteem, because first of all, that's the first thing that hits young girls, right? They feel like they can't do it, and becoming independent. Get your driver's license, get a job.
Right.
Don't depend on what life is going to take. You may not be married the next day.
Right.
And so I would say definitely I had those issues. Luckily, I did have someone that helped me through a lot of that. And
it's just a part of life, isn't it?
And I think what the young generation, yeah, and something I was, you may feel like your outer self might show confidence, and sometimes you even have to do that, and tell your mind that you're not going to self-doubt yourself, And
Yeah.
one person once told me, and I took their advice. They said, even if you see a job that you may not think you're qualified for, go for it, because you might think that you're not, but someone might see that, or you do that, and that I felt like I was prepared for, and there's maybe one or two things that, when you are approachable, when you're a very adaptable person, you can learn different jobs. And that's what I've used in my life. And I tell people that don't limit yourself. So when you talk about limitless, I say a lot of people maybe put those, those barriers on themselves. Like, I can't do this, or I don't know that skill, and like my Spanish was not the greatest. And I, end up marrying a man who speaks Spanish. I end up going to a church all in Spanish. And now my Spanish is better than my, and I use my Spanish every day in the world. I did because I felt like, learning languages for me, it wasn't that it wasn't easy, but I wanted to be like 100%. And
Right.
I'm still not, but I feel like I'm not going to let that limit me in what I can do.
Right. Yeah. So on that note, what does Limitless Woman mean to you?
I would say so many things. When you those limit on yourself, it stops you from wanting to achieve those dreams that you have. So I would say, for myself, a lot of times I think that, and maybe to my Dutch, you may think, oh, I can do this, I can do that. You maybe overload yourself with so much because you feel like you are limitless, right? Then there's so much you can do. You get time management because, and like you can do and accomplish, and there's no limit when you really plan things out. And I've always been that way. I've been a list person and a to-do person, like a to-do list person before. Like, I had those Franklin planners, when I was a kid, and I would write everything out. And so that was part of my nature. So I always felt like, there's so many things that I want to do. Why would I put a limit on like a time or an age? And women should feel in love with you. I think that message has to be given more, and especially to the younger. I hire a lot of millennials. I work with youth in my church, and I see this generation feeling very lost. I think, and maybe it's always been that way. I just never saw it, and maybe I'm more in tune with what I see now because I'm interacting more, and you have very strong, confident women, but you have so many of those that feel like they can't, and those limits are upon them because of their circumstances or their upbringing or their you know the way that they have been taught, like maybe you can't do this, and that has to be a mindset change. So I believe that women definitely, for me, what it means is that going above and beyond what you think you can do, setting those goals, and even if it's something that seems impossible, you definitely need to go and try that, because if you say impossible, it's going to be impossible, and it's
Right.
if you say you can do it, because I'm like, you know, Leida? Well, I just tried it. Like, it's something that you just go for, you know, or women who've started businesses with very little resources, you know, and now with
Right.
so much out there in the world, you know, more than what we had back 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I think social media is a great tool. I feel like what you're doing with YouTube and Facebook. I always think, my goodness, if I had Facebook and YouTube when I had my dance
Oh man, you would have been all over it.
studio, thousands too. No, you know, I feel that it's an age right now, you know, as we see what happens in the world. I think that, you know, and having teenagers and young adults in the world, I feel like we need to still spread that message where, as women, no matter what your circumstances, single, young, old, you know, poor, rich, I mean, there's so many things that you are still capable of doing, but it does start with the mindset, and like you said, being confident about yourself. And you know, and unfortunately, a lot of people are not surrounded around that positivity, and I
Right.
feel like
Yeah. And something really key that you said was the active role that your mom took to
that's really,
develop you in that way, develop you to strive for independence and the ability that I can do that,
yeah,
which is, it's
yeah,
been something that's been huge for me in raising my daughter.
hmm,
And, you know, when she was little, I had this habit of treating her like the baby because she was the youngest. And all of a sudden it clicked like a light bulb. If I continue to treat her like the baby and the youngest and the little girl, what am I setting her up for? And it was like a light bulb
yeah,
moment. And now it's like, okay, Elvie, your chore is do the trash. And that's just the way it is, you know. And so it's fun to watch her grow because her and I had a
oh
conversation
yeah,
recently. And I said, we should do a video about what we've learned, about what we've, or what your mom has taught you about confidence and self-esteem. And she's like, Mom, I teach you. I'm like, I love it. I tell everybody that story. I love it. And yeah, you're right. We have to, of course, there's a
you can be
humility.
confident, obviously. It's really.
Say that again.
I said no, and then she obviously has seen your example, which is great, you know, and I think that's one thing that our children see from us. I look at my oldest son who's 20, and people say like he's just like you in so many real,
Yeah.
very outgoing, and but he's very and calm, like, and I think that, you know, he wasn't raised with his father very much, and so I feel that other people, but I surrounded him around a lot of mentors. I was keeping busy with sports, and you know, he did Boy Scouts and he did service projects, and I just was so, because he was my first son, and I wanted to make sure he thinks. So I'm sure your daughter is seeing what you're doing, and these things, they trickle down somehow. We don't know where it's going to come out
Right.
each year, but it's in their memory and human nature. A little bit of how we're. It's that's, you know.
So you were cutting
These
out a
are,
little bit, so but I got the gist of what you're saying and the human nature, and I could not agree more. And building that up in our children is huge, huge, huge. And being the example. We're not perfect, and I think that's one thing I like to share with my children too is mommy's not perfect, but I'm doing the best that I can, and we learn from each other in that light, you know.
yeah,
So it's a beautiful place.
very true.
But I am so thankful that you joined me today. This was really cool that
Well, thanks
you
for
took time out
inviting
of your.
me. Thank
Yes,
you. No,
yeah, I
it's
was
my
very
pleasure.
excited. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, if you have any comments about what you just watched today in this video, if you have any input that you'd like to share about something maybe you've done with your children to build up their confidence, to live in a limitless mindset, I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. And thanks so much, Leida. And let's talk soon.
Yes, you are very welcome.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Great day.
You
Bye
too.
bye.
Oops. I'll have to cut this part out, but I'm going to, so when I do the outro, I'm going to have to cut this out anyway. It will cut us off, and so I won't see you after that. So have a good day.